Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Nazir. We are up to Perek Daled Mishnah Aleph. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbai Eliyahu ben Burcha Israel of Chana Bad Miriam and Sason ben Raya Menuchatam Began Eden Amen and Le'avdir ben Chaim Lechaim v'derefua Shenemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa Betoch Shah Chulei Israel. The Mishnah begins, Mi Shamar Areni Nazir. If someone said, I'm hereby a Nazir, V'shamach Chavero v'amar v'ani, and his friend heard him and said, and I, which is understood to mean that I will be like him, v'ani, and a third person heard the second person and said, and I, Kulam Nazirim, all of them become Nazirim, provided that each one made his declaration very shortly after the previous person's declaration. This must be done, Toch Kidei Dibur, which means within the amount of time it takes to make an utterance. Now, Toch Kidei Dibur, the amount of time it takes to make an utterance is the time it takes to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe, about 2 seconds. Two statements made within this amount of time of each other are considered to be connected in regard to many Torah laws. Therefore, when the first person says, I'm hereby a Nazir, and the second person says, and I, within this brief amount of time, his declaration is clearly linked to the first person's declaration, and it is as if he said, and I will be like you. Similarly, when the third person makes his declaration within this amount of time of the second person's declaration, he attaches his declaration to the second person's declaration, and it is as if the third person said, I will be like the second person. Since the second person became a Nazir, so did the third person. In this case, the vow of each person takes effect because it is based on the vow of the person before him, back to the vow of the first person. The Mishnah now teaches what happens if one of them had his vow annulled by a sage. Hutar Rishon Utru Chulan, if the first one had his vow annulled and that therefore retroactively released from his Nazirut, all of them, meaning all of the people who vowed after him, are automatically released from their Nazirut since their vows were all based on his. Since a sage annuls a vow retroactively, it now turns out that the first person to make the vow was never a Nazir. Therefore, the one who said after him, and I will be like him, did not become a Nazir either, as Tosfot explained on page 20b in Masechet Nazir. However, if the last one had his vow annulled, only the last person is released, but all the rest of them are still bound by their vows and must observe their Nazirut. Accordingly, if the middle person had his vow annulled, the first person remains bound by his vow, but the third person is released. Another example of someone who based his vow to be a Nazir on someone else's vow to be a Nazir. Amar Areni Nazir v'shema chavero v'amar. If someone declared, I'm hereby a Nazir, and his friend heard him and said, Pi chepiv usari kisaro, my mouth should be like his mouth as concerns drinking wine, or my hair should be like his hair as concerns taking haircuts. Arez a Nazir, he too becomes a Nazir. For the vow to take effect, he must actually add the words as concerns drinking wine or as concerns taking haircuts, as the Rav explains based on the Gemara on page 21b in Masechet Nazir. Now the Mishnah contrasts the previous law with the law in similar situations where a husband and wife become Nazirim one after the other and the husband cancelled his wife's vow. Hareni Nazir, if a man said, I am hereby a Nazir, V'shama ishto v'amra v'ani, and his wife heard him and said, and I will be like him, which is as if she too vowed to be a Nazirah, Meferet shelah v'shelo kayam, he may cancel her vow and his vow remains in place. Now a husband has the power to cancel vows made by his wife if they involve self-denial such as Nazirut, or if they affect their personal relationship. But since the husband's Nazirut is not dependent on his wife's, rather hers is dependent on his vow is not affected when he cancels hers. Therefore, he may cancel her vow and his vow remains in place. But if the wife said, I am hereby a Nazirah, v'shama bala v'amar v'ani, and her husband heard her and said, and I will be like her, he becomes a Nazir like her, and eno yachol lafer, he cannot cancel her vow. Since he linked his vow to hers, he in effect approved her vow and is no longer able to cancel it. The Torah states that once a husband agrees to his wife's vow, he cannot later cancel it. The Mishnah teaches that responding to her vow by saying, and I, is equal to approving her vow, he can therefore no longer cancel it. And that is then a Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Bet continues a discussion about vows involving a husband and wife. Hareni Nazir v'at. If a man said to his wife, I am hereby a Nazir, and what about you? V'amra amen, and she said amen, because she chose to be like him and become a Nazirah. Meferet shelah v'shelo kayam, he may cancel her vow, but his vow remains in place. Asking her whether she wants to become a Nazirah is not considered a confirmation of her vow. However, if he told her to become a Nazirah like himself and she agreed, he is considered to have confirmed her vow and he is not able to cancel it. Harini nizira ve'ata. If a woman said to her husband, I'm hereby a nizira, and what about you? V'amar amen. And he responded amen because he chose to be like her and become a nazir. And he cannot cancel her vow since he linked his vow to hers. He approved her vow and is no longer able to cancel it. And that is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.